On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, the 2026 delay debate. As you probably would expect, this tweet blew up. One song confirmed not to be on the soundtrack. But think of the exposure. Go f*** yourself. And unreleased GTA games discussed by ex-Rockstar devs. GTA 2 Berlin. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Whoa, yes, Dan. Hello and welcome to episode 40 of GTA 6 o'clock, the world's most in-depth and best connected GTA 6 show. I am your host, JJ, and joining me in the studio this week, as you may have just heard at the very top of the show, is Dan Dawkins.
Ahoy, hoy.
Dan, what a big week this is going to be. Lots of exciting things to talk about. And we should mention, by the time this goes out, we may or may not have, definitely will have, the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro. So there is probably lots to discuss around that next week.
Yes, I agree. And I also, past me is telling future you or current you, we are definitely getting a PS5 Pro. I mean, it's nailed on, isn't it?
Yeah, well, by the time this goes out, everyone will have seen the reveal of the, whatever they've called it, PlayStation 5 innovation update or something like that. I can't quite remember their wording, but if for all intents and purposes, it was them saying, here's an announcement for the PS5 Pro.
It's a tech presentation. They've used exact the same language they used for the reveal of the PlayStation 4 Pro, and the timings are almost exactly aligned. So that's the bit that I find most staggering. It's the same thing. I take heart in this, in the way most companies, and we've talked about this on GTA 5 o'clock, most companies have a spreadsheet where they go, what did we do last time? Let's do that again. If you look at the timings of when PS4 launched, when PS4 Pro was announced, when PS4 Pro was released, and the pricings, so far, the alignment for PS5 and PS5 Pro is almost exactly the same, give or take 3 days. So by that measure, PS5 Pro, which I think is going to be announced, like I'm sorry for the sidebar for GTA listeners, will come out in November for an equivalent price to the launch of the PS5 launch price, if history repeats. Let's see, and if it's wrong, producer Nathan, please delete this.
Yeah, and for clarity, we are recording this on Tuesday the 10th. So by the time you're listening to this, all of that stuff has already come out. So you can see how much of those things that Dan has predicted is correct, and let us know in the comments. That'll be fun. But let's get on with the hot GTA 6 news this week and some, as I said, big topics to discuss. Let's kick off with the 2026 delay debate. Now, this is a thing that happened over the weekend, like last weekend, when a Twitter user or X user who is a writer on GTA Base, tweeted pretty late on a Saturday night, I will add as well. It was close to midnight UK time, and I'm pretty sure they're in England. But anyway, they tweeted, exclusive, capital letters, GTA 6 has been internally delayed by Rockstar Games, and they've already decided on the early to mid-2026 release window. Goes on to say, PC is planned for around 12 to 18 months after the console launch. This information comes from multiple devs across 2 studios. Now, as you probably would expect, this tweet blew up. And I would suggest, and I just mentioned it to Dan before we hit the big red record button, that it maybe blew up in a way that they didn't quite expect. Like, it went incredibly viral, we should say. I think the tweet had 3 million views by sort of Monday morning. And then it became a thing that was being widely reported by not just GTA fan sites and gaming media, but like mainstream media, like some of the newspapers over here picked it up. And in that reporting, some of the, headlines from this report, unconfirmed report, almost became facts, which I think made it even more of a problem. And since then, that tweet has been deleted. And I think they have responded on X to say, maybe I didn't get this quite right. I'm going to take the L on this one, guys. Sorry, that kind of thing. And I think the most important thing here is even the original tweet weren't facts. It was just, a report from somebody who has maybe heard from somebody, maybe hasn't. So at best, I'd say it was an informed opinion. At worst, it was some wild speculation. And I actually did reach out to them and got a response. And I'm not going to go into the details of what we talked about, but I'm just going to say, for you, Dan, the information I heard, I wasn't convinced that this could be backed up by anything significant. What it was backed up by, though, is something that Jason Schreier wrote, which I think you have been reading up on.
Yeah, and I think this is where this entire tale is interesting and cautionary, and I'll talk a bit about what I think this means of the modern media cycle. The guy in question who'd put this story out there into the world, I think when he'd started to get heat for the assertion that the game was being delayed.
As you would.
Yeah, right. So he directly started addressing Jason Schreier. Now, Jason Schreier, you probably know, he's like, I guess he's recognised as perhaps the best internally connected journalist who works for Bloomberg, very reputed business organisation. He's their video games reporter. He's ex-Kotaku. He's written a couple of books. He's the guy who's known as having, whether it's true or not, publicly the best connections in the industry. So it's often seen as if, like, if Schreier says something, it's probably true. Now, he's particularly noted for Rockstar because he's written about kind of an inside story in the past about working conditions at Rockstar and studio culture. So I think there's a large degree of trust within the Rockstar community for what he says goes. So this guy who made the assertion the game was late got in touch with Jason Schreier on a Sunday, the day after, and Jason Schreier was out with his kids in the park. And I know this sort of stuff. I've done this where something blows up at work and you're like, I'm just with my children. Can you just leave me be? So what he'd reply back to this guy was like, basically, in so many words, leave me alone. I'm with my kids. But this is not me saying this is true or not true. And I'm not saying I'm going to comment or not comment. I'm just saying I'm not looking at this in any way, shape or form because it's Sunday and I'm with my children. Mm-hmm. Now, the day afterwards, Schreier did clearly poke around the bins or to have a little look around through his contact base. And he says about like 6 people who he described as being in dev at Rockstar. And he had said, and again, I might be slightly misquoting the words, so maybe we can put the actual words on screen. He had said, essentially saying, I cannot confirm this is true. And of the people I know who might know, not to say they would know, but might know, none of them have said this is true. He did also caveat that by saying it's possible, because it is, this decision could have been made at an executive level that's above the information base of his contacts. Mm-hmm. So it's not saying that this is an impossible scenario, merely that it's an unverifiable scenario. And I think that goes back to what you said at the start, where you didn't have confidence in it being true, or where did it come from. This is the interesting bit for me, is this guy clearly felt, he had enough trust in what he considered to be sources to put it out in the world. Unless he was literally making it up. But that's like, for someone who works in the GTA community, that's, as he's finding now, reputation detonating. So this is where I'm struggling to square all this up. But where Schreier came down with is basically, there is no news. But that's not to say there may not be a delay. It's just that I have no verification of this delay. I don't know, is that a fair summary of the madness of this so far?
Yeah, I've actually pulled out the Schreier quote that I can read just so we all understand it, and I think producer Nathan can put it up on screen as well. And it's good news is that 6 Rockstar employees told me that they have not heard of any delay. Bad news, it's a big, ambitious game and could very well slip. Too much time left to say anything definitive. And he went on to say, I want to be very clear, 6 staff told me that they weren't informed of a delay. For all I know, Rockstar's executive team could have decided months ago to delay GTA 6 without telling the company, but the lack of internal announcements suggests that the Twitter rumor was nonsense. Now, I think that is basically, as you summarized, everyone going, currently, what we know, and what we know officially, as we've discussed many a time on the GTA 6 O'Clock show, is that currently GTA 6 is on track for its fall 2025 release. And there have been no statements to the contrary of that. And the only thing that will change that is if they come out and say, okay, we're pushing it back. So currently, there is, what's fall 2025? Like about 12 months left until the game comes out. Of course, within that 12 months, the game can slip.
Yeah.
But right now, all signs are pointing to everything's fine until we hear otherwise.
Yeah, and I would say the most definitive and certifiable measure of the game being on track is the earnings report that was just a few weeks ago, where they are obliged, because they are talking to their shareholders or the investors, to declare their future-looking statement. And at that point in time, they just said nothing to suggest the game. They almost said nothing about the game at all, but there was no indication whatsoever that it might slip. Or that's not to say it can't. It's just there was no indication whatsoever that it was slipping.
I will add to this, and I think this is part of the reason that things like this do blow up, is because since trailer 1, we've obviously heard absolutely nothing official from like the Rockstar channels about GTA 6, which leads people to believe, well, if we haven't heard anything, there has to be problems. But actually, as regular listeners to the show will know, if you look at the timeline gaps between GTA 5's trailer 1 and trailer 2, that was a 12-month gap between those two trailers. For Red Dead 2, it was 11 months. So even though we haven't had any more info yet, I'm still looking at this as that, as you mentioned just earlier, Dan, that is very much in line with their previous marketing plans. And if you're looking at it in the spreadsheet of when do we do beats, it's, at the moment, it's very much lining up, which would put trailer 2's release sometime between November and December this year.
Yeah.
Will it be exactly a year after trailer 1? That's very possible. Could it be slightly earlier than that? Of course. Could it be slightly later? Yes. But if you're looking at the marketing schedule that they have followed for the last 2 releases of their major franchise games, you would expect trailer 2 to come within about a year of trailer 1 releasing, which would put us in that November-December window. Now, the only updates that we got for GTA 5 and I think Red Dead in between that was some screenshots, but the screenshots were there to cover up the delay announcement. So it's like, we're really sorry, we're pushing the game back.
Us all up.
Here are some screenshots. It's still on track. So in fact, I would say that because we don't have any screens right now, no news is good news, as much as I want some screenshot news. And if I had to choose between having some screenshots right now or having a couple more months to wait and then getting a trailer which still says fall 2025, I'm picking the trailer, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing that stands out for me about all of this, because really this is a story that has been, within a week, this story will have never existed. But within a 48 to 72 hour period, it becomes this leviathan that roars away with itself. And I think it's an interesting microcosm of the way news works, and also the way that people don't really trust news anymore. From the guy who put the tweet out into the world with a degree of legitimacy, because he's from GTA base, it's worth noting that he did legitimately say that when trailer 1 would drop. And again, this is where you can't talk about the people you talk to, but it is of awareness to me that he had information that was good, right, around the first trailer. Doesn't mean he's got good information the second time around, but it means that this is someone who's been right once. Does it mean he's right twice? No. And as at the moment, it looks like not, right? But we still don't know that definitively. It just feels that way. So this guy puts this stuff out into the world. The entire community turns itself inside out talking about it. The thing that's really, if you're a Rockstar, the thing that drives you insane is that it then gets reported. Like James and I were talking about this off air. Loads of mainstream outlets are reporting on this because they want any excuse to write about GTA 6. So like just a sample of crazy headlines. So like the Metro UK newspaper, Games Inbox, has GTA 6 been delayed until 2026? Daily Express, this is not a good source, says GTA 6 release date delay as worst fears come true for Grand Theft Auto 6 fans. That is a masterclass in SEO bullshit writing. It's got GTA 6 and Grand Theft Auto 6 written out. It's even got GTA 6 release date in the proper SEO format. It's just a proper nonsense.
It's also a very clickbaity headline, right? Because that isn't actually true, but it's written to make it sound like it is factual.
And people like who know better, for example, like Rockstar, Intel, they're very much in the industry, in the world of it, have written GTA 6 not delayed to 2026, not yet at least. So they're still writing it. They're just hedging their bets.
Yeah.
We're talking about it. There's this whole cycle of, rumor and debunking, and all of the actors in the media are incentivized to report the non-news because of the way news works. This is not news for anyone, right? But I just find it absolutely maddening and bewildering. This is the case. Then you look at people like, Schreier will save us. He'll anoint this rumor or not anoint this rumor. And I guess the point where I'm really getting to with all of this is the guy who put this rumor out, whatever his incentives were, and I will admit, it's a bizarre thing to want to be the guy to announce the death of Christmas.
Yeah,
like that's not something you want to be famous for, I would say. But the pile-on he's faced is actually really, it's disproportionate, I think, to what he was trying to do. As annoying as that is, I think maybe he's a kid who made a mistake. I don't know. But I mean, I just think that the vitriol attached to things like this isn't a very good reflection on any of us.
No.
Don's teacher hat. But it's just a shame, I think. And I'm sure no one will feel worse than this guy, but he should have thought this through. He should have thought this through because I didn't know where he thought this was going to go and how he thought he was going to stand it up. Or I think he must have thought, this is the way I look at it, he must have thought, I trust my sources, this is rock solid. It's so certain. All I need to do is ask Jason Schreier to press the tick button and I'm anointed as the king of GTA.
On a similar level, if I tweet this out, it will encourage other people to confirm it or support it in a way that means that I was right, but someone else is really doing the heavy lifting of all the reporting. There might have been a bit of if people are telling me this, they must be telling other people, or other people inside that group might have contacts in the media that then might go, if one person's done it, now it's fine that we can all say what we've heard.
And so much of not news, but this kind of rumor reporting works like that, where it gets to a stage where no one knows where the original rumor even began. No one even cares because it's all about writing the SEO headline or writing this morning I clicked on a load of YouTube videos. GTA 6 delayed until 2026, ? Major controversy.
Yeah.
GTA 6 new release date 2026. No, it isn't. Don't write that. GTA 5 versus GTA 6.
Headlines for this show, Dan.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah. GTA 6 delayed again, new release date mid-2026. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. And I guess this is the world we all inhabit, but I don't know.
That's why we exist.
That's it.
To come here and tell you the real facts.
And I don't think either of us can say definitively the game will or won't be delayed, but I think we could both say at this point in time, there's no verifiable truth to any of this.
Yeah, we have heard nothing to say otherwise. What I will say, though, out of all of this, is if we want to say something, I'm going to say we're going to see trailer 2 this year between November and December. There. Go make a YouTube video about that. All right, well, let's move on then to the music track that's not coming to GTA 6. Now, this is fun, silly, and a little bit crazy on many levels. And this has come from Rockstar Games have reportedly offered $7,500 to use Heaven 17's Temptation in Grand Theft Auto 6. Now, we could play a little game of how short a clip can we play of Temptation before we get a copyright strike. I'll let Nathan play with that. Yep, that's about enough. So this is according to Martin Ware, who is a founding member of Heaven 17. And He has also been on Twitter, or X, which seems to be the source of a lot of these things recently. And I quote, he said, "I was recently contacted by my publishers on behalf of Rockstar Games re the possibility of using Temptation on the new Grand Theft Auto 6. Naturally, excited about the immense wealth that was about to head my way, I scrolled to the bottom of the email, re the offer. It was $7,500 for a buyout of any future royalties from the game forever. To put this in context, Grand Theft Auto 6, at this point, where meant Grand Theft Auto 5, because 6 hasn't come out yet, grossed, wait for it, $8.6 billion. But think of the exposure. Go f*** yourself. He then actually later on went on to clarify that it was $7,500 each for the 3 writers. So actually the offer, again, this isn't being widely reported, was $22,500 for that one track. I want to get your initial thoughts on his take of, like, first of all, tweeting about this, and second of all, like, what you think about, well, first of all, I guess, is Temptation a good song? Does it belong on GTA 6's soundtrack? It's not going to anymore. But
well, the tragedy of this is, what a great track, and it would have been a brilliant fit for GTA. We'll probably talk about this, but it's a perfect 80s track. It would have fitted for something like Wave, should that channel return. Temptation, the very title lends itself to what we think are the thematics of GTA 6. It's a great song. Sadly, unless Rockstar are going to, he sees this as some crazy hardball offer to negotiate publicly, which I do not see Rockstar. Can you imagine Rockstar bending to one maverick creator saying, I want more money? Sure, have more money. And by the way, the other, and you'll talk about this, however many other tracks are in the game all get more money. And now we've exponentially increased the cost of creating our soundtrack by this amount. That's a shame. It's just a shame. And it sounds like, similar to other things we've talked about on this show, someone else using GTA 6, whether it's the Florida Joker or the jokers at the agency representing that singer whose name I forget, who accidentally leaked GTA 6 on their Spotify page, people use GTA 6 for their own attention or ends. And the irony is, like, Martin Ware talks about, I wouldn't do this for exposure, but I will tweet about it for exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting take. And I would somewhat agree that, I think in one of his tweets, he was, people were replying and going like, oh, but think of the uplift you might get, I guess in the similar way that we've seen, like, Running Up That Hill in Stranger Things become like a #1 hit single 20 years after that thing came out, because it was featured in a prominent scene in that show. And people were like, hey, this might be good for you. And he went on to say, exposure in terms of extra streams. Ware says, and, believe what you want here, that 1 million extra streams would generate around $1,000 for each writer. So that's actually like $3,000 for an extra million streams. So in the grand scheme of things, I would say that is actually quite in line with this offer. Like, that's obviously it's pennies per stream, but that kind of thing, that kind of uplift, I think you might be able to expect from being on a soundtrack, possibly for one of the popular songs that becomes, a staple of the radio stations. And if you look at the bigger picture, August 2024, GTA 5 has sold 200 million units. Now, not all of those players are listening to the radio. Not all of those players are listening to the right radio station. And then not all of those players are listening to the right radio station for a long enough time to hear that track cycle around and play out in their game. So even though they've sold 200 million units, the uplift of how many people would actually hear that song in the game and how many times they would hear it, to me, and we'll get onto the actual, like, real facts of this, but to me, that doesn't seem like such a bad offer from the outset of someone, not knowing all of the negotiations. It's too late now, but I would have said, if I was management, maybe we'll relook at this and actually think, is this a good idea for us?
Yeah, there's so many layers to this. I think, one would be if it was like a negotiating tactic, like what's your real figure you'd want? Is it, 10 times the amount you've offered, 5 times? And then, then it faces up against market reality, which is, I think, what you can add some context to, really.
Yeah, I mean, and as we haven't mentioned yet, but they've already had a song in a GTA game.
Yeah.
Right? So they should know what the base levels are or how this works and that kind of thing, because they've been through this before. But yeah, it's a little bit baffling to me. But anyway, we got an email on this topic from Bryce Jennings, who said, and I think this is all related, so we'll go through it. Hi, JJ and DD. Wonder if you could provide some insight into the way music licensing works in video games in the light of the news that Martin Ware of Heaven 17 was allegedly approached by Rockstar. What is considered a standard and or fair offer, and does the popularity or age of a song, in this case the song is 40 years old, have any bearing on the amount Rockstar would pay? The other context here is the way in which the song is being used. Obviously, there would be a massive difference between a song being a main theme or in a trailer or just in a random radio station. Is Rockstar lowballing Martin here, or is Martin just being greedy given the references and the amount of money GTA 5 has made and he wants a bigger cut? Where do the lines blur when you are dealing with a massive game title like GTA that people have bigger expectations? So I've loved the show every week. Thanks for your work. Well, thank you very much for getting in touch, Bryce. That's a great email. The first point, do you think this was for a trailer or just a radio station inclusion? For me, I think it's just a radio station inclusion. I don't think they're considering trailer songs at this stage. I would imagine most of them are locked down, or that at least there's a good couple of titles that they're like, consider this or this or this. I don't think they're reaching out to people now to be like, oh, we need to pick the song for trailer 2. Let's quickly get in touch with Martin and see what he thinks.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I agree with you based on gut alone. I wonder if when Rockstar approach a music artist for a trailer, if they have any kind of modified version of an NDA or a different type of approach to someone who's of a higher profile, or the trailer will be more important to them. I imagine there's a different type of contract or approach used. I could be wrong. Maybe it's all standard, but the way this has come out feels more like there's probably several hundred more conversations like this going on with artists from all over the world. It's just that Martin Ware is the one and come out and gone, I don't like it. Yeah,
the next point is the interesting stuff, I think, which is what is considered the standard or fair offer in the industry. Now, GTA is obviously an exception. So what I've done is gone and looked at movies, because that's probably the closest level we're going to get to a game as big as GTA 6. So the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers states that the synchronization fee charged by music publishers for major studio films are usually between $15,000 and $60,000, with the majority ranging from $20,000 to $45,000. This can be lower if the music budget is smaller or higher, or if the song is used several times in the motion picture. If it is used under the opening or closing credits, if the song is a major hit, or if it's vital to the plot or particular scene of the motion picture. There are no hard and fast rules in this area, as the fees are negotiated in the context of each individual film. In this case, I should say, let's just swap out film for game, because it's pretty much the same context here, I think. The same song may be licensed at very different rates for different projects, i.e. major studio release, independent film, foreign film, film festival license only, web production, or student film. It should be mentioned that the record companies normally charge between $15,000 and $70,000 for the use of existing master recordings in a major studio film, but depending on the stature of the artist, the length of the use, the music budget, and how the recording is being used, these fees can be greater or less. So, based on that, I would say that $22,500, which is the offer that Rockstar was given for one track on a radio station, if we're imagining that all of that is true, is very much in line with what a major Hollywood movie would pay for licensing that kind of track. It is also worth noting that it's common practice that most video game developers do not pay royalties for video game music used in their games because these are soundtracks and they're not considered public performances within the music industry. So all that being said, I think the range of 22,500 is good. Like it's a good, it's an offer in line with industry standards. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like I was saying up top, like if it was 10 times what that fee is, the 7,500, that would be out of step with market rates. And again, assuming it's a track of hundreds that appears on a radio station, it doesn't make sense to scale at that level. You couldn't have 400 tracks or whatever it is at $75,000.
Yeah,
that's an astronomical outlay.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and we look into this a bit more. Let's take GTA 5 as an example. There are 16 radio stations in GTA 5. They play more than 441 tracks of licensed music, and there are also 2 talk radio stations. So let's, as a base, say that they're paying everybody, which they're not, $22,000. Some of that will be more, some of that will be less, I imagine. For 441 tracks, that's $9.7 million they're using for the soundtrack of GTA 5. Things have obviously changed since the release of GTA 5. It's been, over a decade.
Yeah.
Rates have probably gone up. And there's a lot of other negotiations going on now. It's used in many more different places. It's much more mixed media. Could be a lot of other caveats. So let's pretend that the average is now $30,000 and the offer that they put out there is slightly below that. And they're going to want, I would imagine, more tracks than GTA 5 to be able to say this is our biggest soundtrack ever. So let's even, add on 9 extra tracks and we're on 450 tracks at $30,000. You're now looking at a soundtrack budget of $13.5 million just for soundtrack licensing alone. That is before any of, the management fees, the legal fees, any of that. It's just for licensing the soundtrack. And $13.5 million. And we know the GTA 6 budget is huge, but that is a big chunk of cash to be using on music.
Yeah, for context, and we don't know these figures 100%. If you do a little bit of researching around the development budget of GTA 5, for example, that's quoted as being somewhere in the region of, say, 130 to $150 million. So an outlay of like 10 to 15 million on soundtrack will be 10% of your entire production budget going on soundtrack. Now, maybe, given that the soundtrack is so utterly integral to the GTA experience, that 10% is well spent, but it's still a big old chunk. And I dare say, given that GTA 6 has been in dev for, like we say, 10 years plus, with a team of thousands all probably earning quite reasonable salaries, this is going to be one expensive video game. Like, it really, really is. Like, in terms of the most expensive video games like of all time, like and again, I don't believe these figures, but like Star Citizen that's not come out is quoted as having a development cost of 514 million. It hasn't come out. That's insane. But like a normal expensive game, like let's say Cyberpunk, which is a really big high profile release, has got a dev budget of somewhere between, I don't know, up to 174 million. So if that helps contextualize any of this conversation, it's a bit of background.
Yeah, I mean, they did have to pay Keanu Reeves. So,
well, yeah, and exactly how much of that was Reeves. That's a whole different thing. Like how much you pay for celebrity likenesses, and that's another podcast where we could talk about why Rockstar walked away from celebrity licenses, having worked with Ray Liotta, probably especially Ray Liotta, and you think back to the GTA when there was big names in that game. GTA San Andreas had big names in it. They've moved away from that model entirely to working with people who are just a bit off radar because it's, well, probably A, cheaper, and B, easier to get them to re-record 7 billion variations of the same line.
Yeah, I guess, until recently when we hit GTA Online and like Dr. Dre's in it and people like that, like, we start seeing little cameos of people.
Sure. But like the main actors now, they don't look for celebrities.
No, definitely. And I think that the final point on this, which may be interesting, is like what this says about the development timelines of GTA 6. Like, do you think we can read anything into this that Now they are at the stage, seemingly, where they are outreaching to people for radio station inclusions, so they can bulk out that soundtrack of however many radio stations they end up having in the game. If, putting my production hat on for a minute, that to me would be one of the things that you do towards the end of everything. Like, everything else is in place. Now we need to get some music stuff in the game. And, let's say about a year before release feels like a good time to start doing all your music stuff. So, going right back to the top of the show about, like, is it on track or not? From a personal opinion, I would say that if they are now looking at bolstering the radio stations with some music tracks and starting to reach out to artists, that's a good sign that we are getting towards the end of development. Like, it's not something that they're going to do at the beginning. Or like, hey, go off and find us 400 tracks, please. It's like, we'll deal with that as we get, more confident that the game is fully fleshed out and ready.
Yeah, and it could be that they've locked down a mere 200 and are kind of working through tranches of, actually, we're in a good place. Let's get some more music on the soundtrack, And again, if the use of the music is non-contextual, so it just appears based on your choice or a random moment in time with the radio station, we are also assuming that music in GTA 6 works in the way GTA 5 does, that there are actually radio stations, or is it radio stations plus your own customizable playlists? What role does the mobile phone play, music players, all that sort of stuff? We don't know, really. We can speculate about it, but we don't know. So, yeah, exactly what you said. I think that it's something you can plug in probably quite late because it just overlays, doesn't it? And I dare say in term, it's different if you've got a track that's integral to the action or baked into a cutscene or a big moment. That's a much different thing. If the entire sequence is predicated on hitting beats and music syncing, but this won't be that. Unless Temptation was the track for the final mission and blah blah blah. But it just, that doesn't seem to be true.
No, and that statement from the American Society of Composers, Authors and Publishers does have a clause in it that says, if the track is being used for something like that, like for a major beat or a trailer or a story thing, normally you pay a lot more money for that because it's an integral part of the film. Like, if anyone's seen Deadpool and Wolverine, like NSYNC and having like Bye Bye Bye, a whole sequence is like basically relied on that being in there. They probably paid a fair whack for that. But now, probably going to be a very popular song again. I actually heard it on one of my music cycles that it just came on, and I was like, I know where that's come from. So we're not going to see it in GTA 6.
It seems unlikely.
Seems pretty unlikely now, but there is a good insight there into, like, I hope that answers your question.
I just want, before we move on, I just wanted to add quickly just a point on this is, I don't want to diminish creators' rights to earn money from the work that they've created, right? Like, I get where he's coming from on that side, right? The fair market value for that is difficult to ascertain. The thing I think is interesting is I feel, for example, very warmly about tracks such as, let's pick one randomly, All My Exes Live in Texas, a song that I never would have encountered, right, had it not been for GTA. Mm-hmm. Has it made me go and seek out all of the writing and work of Whitey Schaefer, who wrote and didn't record the original version, but did record the GTA version? No is the answer. So I understand the argument there, kind of, but I will forever feel warmly about that song.
Yes.
Right? And in a way that, this is what, were you Heaven 17, you might consider being part of that soundtrack changes the perception of your band and your legacy for all time with millions of people.
Yeah.
Now, this is again, Dan, why are you sharing what you think again with us? To extrapolate this further, FIFA, and I can't verify this, but it's something I've just been searching up. FIFA, there was rumors going around, or like industry talk going around, that labels were paying to be in FIFA. Because such is the clout of being on the FIFA soundtrack, and it's so much of the zeitgeist and it's annual, that for labels, it wouldn't just be a case of EA paying them, it might be the reverse.
Yeah, I believe that.
And bands submit because they know it's so important to them, because you're one of the however many tracks that is seen as the pulse and would result. So yeah, so from FIFA's perspective and EA's perspective, damn straight this is valuable being in our game.
Mm.
So, it's another version of this in the industry, but EA clearly aren't forking out fortunes. I think they're almost in the reverse scenario. So again, this is a difficult thing to balance up. I feel a little bit for Martin Ware, but I don't know if he's going to win this round. Bracket, he's not.
And so we move on to some info on some unreleased GTA games, Dan. Now, this comes via a report from Time Extension. Now, I think I should say that these are mostly old reports, and this Time Extension article even states the following: we've been busy compiling a list of these projects, amassing everything we could find about these projects, trawling through our old archive of interviews for comments from developers, and conducting additional conversations where necessary. The list includes everything from early concepts for projects that ended up releasing to versions of the game that were scrapped and wholly original titles that were killed before they had a chance to reach the market. Enjoy. Now, we're not going to go through all of these, but you can see the link probably in the description, or just go and find the Time Extension website and it will be on there. But there are a couple of notable inclusions here, a couple that we've also mentioned and discussed on previous shows back in the GTA 5 o'clock days. This might be a little trip down memory lane for you, Dan. First up, GTA Tokyo. Now, we've definitely talked about this before. Now, according to sources that Time Extension spoke with, Sam Houser reportedly was pretty caught up with the Tokyo scene. This was because members of Rockstar, such as Houser, were doing a lot of travel to the city for promotion of GTA 3. The game had just launched, and Grand Theft Auto Tokyo was one of the cities being considered at the time. Unfortunately, the idea was short-lived due to how long it would take to get there and back. A source familiar to the plan said, "It seemed like a cool, interesting city to do it in, but at the end of the day, it just came down to logistics, getting the research team out there long enough to map the city, and just the cultural satire in terms of what could possibly work in a fitting, narrative way in that city. Making those things connect was a little tough, and we thought it was just cooler to stick with the cities that were introduced in Grand Theft Auto 1. I think this is something that we have covered before. We've definitely mentioned GTA Tokyo. Nice to have a little bit of context as to why it maybe didn't happen, and that probably speaks to the wider settings for GTA games, like especially nowadays, and even back then, by the sounds of things, getting the team that need to go out to the city to map it all properly, find out all of the locations they want to feature, and fit in a storyline that's going to fit in narratively and culturally to that setting takes ages, is expensive, and is pretty difficult. So doing it in a city that is, not in America, which is, where some of the Rockstar studios are, or I guess not in England, where Rockstar North is, becomes pretty much a logistical challenge. So there's probably some considerations there around what could be next, if anywhere. If we're going to move away from these core cities, where would we go? I think it's going to be hard to go to somewhere like Tokyo just because of the expense of it. The other one, do you want to jump in on there?
All I wanted to say about Tokyo was, and I probably contradicted myself in podcasts of old, and people feel free to pull out these quotes, I totally buy that Sam Houser would have been interested in it. And I think if you go back to, say, early 2000s, when Rockstar were actually making a lot more interesting and diverse games, going back to even just 1999, they were making Thrasher, Skate and Destroy. Games like, more recently, but still 20 years ago, games like Manhunt, The Warriors, Ping Pong.
Yeah.
You can't imagine modern Rockstar making games like that or divesting their interest in that way. Like to be able to go, hey, team of 100, go and do this amazing weird side project. Now, at the time they were making a lot of Midnight Club, I wonder if there was an intersection between, particularly when the Fast and the Furious films really became a franchise and a big thing. Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, that was 2006. That was when Rockstar were kind of in Midnight Club, probably, 2-ish, 3 stage. Mm-hmm. It could have aligned. Then they might have gone, actually, we love this as a location. It's a good thing. Let's investigate it. And then everything you've described comes true. But I guess my wider point is actually it's quite sad that maybe Rockstar are now forever lashed to the GTA mast and don't get to explore their creative muse.
Yeah, totally. I will add in one more of these things that we can discuss, which is GTA 2 Berlin. Now, this was shortly after the release of GTA 2. Take-Two announced it would be producing an expansion pack for the game called GTA 2 Berlin, similar to how Grand Theft Auto London had been released in the wake of the first game. The expansion was mentioned in a couple of German magazines in 1999 and was also mentioned in an SEC filing from Take-Two. According to these separate news sources, the game is going to be released in spring 2000 for PC and PlayStation and would have been set in the 80s before the fall of the Berlin Wall. It would also have featured a period-appropriate soundtrack, which was to be comprised of German new wave music. The report stated that the game was being developed under Take-Two's German division, but no one that Time Extension spoke to at Rockstar Toronto or DMA Design could remember the project when we asked them about it. Recently, though, Time Extension say that they were able to contact Alexander Lipka, who worked as the regional sales manager for Take-Two in Germany during this period, as well as someone from Rockstar New York, who were able to shine a little bit more light on this lost entry into the series. In a message on LinkedIn, Lipka told Time Extension, "As far as I can remember, there was indeed the idea back then to create an extension with Berlin's districts for GTA. The plan included underground rides through the expansive Berlin, as well as visits to the Berlin Radio Tower, and of course, everything with German car brands." So there's a couple of interesting city locations in there and something for you to think about, Dan, as we expand GTA Online into whatever it's going to become with GTA 6. But I would say let's get Los Santos and Liberty City in there first. But any thoughts on GTA Berlin?
No, I guess this is going back to the kind of the era when I was probably truthfully a bit less interested in GTA. Do I think it's something they'll revisit? Probably not. It just feels like there's other stones to turn and flip first, which is a shame. But I've said this before on the show. Like, it's a shame that Rockstar can't explore some of this stuff. I've made the case previously for why, say, a GTA London would be really fun, just because it's so different.
What, a return to GTA London?
Yeah, like I say, a GTA London in the modern era is what I mean. I think I wax lyrical about, and what would happen is, like all the GTA maps, they'd pack all of Britain into London. So the outskirts of London would be all of the rest of the UK. But GTA missions in country lanes driving like a mini metro would be so fun and so silly, especially if you were blasting out like modern hip hop or whatever it was, right? I just think the juxtaposition would make it hilarious. And it's a shame that we're not probably going to get that. So, I don't think this will be immediately relevant. I'd love to be proven wrong, but it's a shame that Rockstar aren't digging a bit wider.
No, as I said, whatever GTA Online becomes after GTA 6 is released, let's get Los Santos and Liberty City in there somewhere down the line. Then maybe we can have GTA London as an online expansion. That would probably tick those boxes for you. And then we've got a lovely, GTA universe where we can go to America and London and America and back. And we'll probably just go between those continents. Maybe they'll end up going to Tokyo. Like, you could expand that GTA Online universe into different places.
I genuinely think I'll be dead before these things happen. At the current glacial rate of production, that's okay. It'll be for my children.
Yes. It's for the future. And speaking of the future, that is when we will be back. See what I did? That was brilliant.
Good segue.
So thank you all for watching. Please let us know any questions or comments you have in the YouTube comments below. You can send us messages on Twitter at GTAVOclock and get in touch via email gtavio'clock@gmail.com.
Just before we sign off, I wanted to thank everybody in the comments who pointed out a mistake I certainly had made in the previous episode, was that it sounded like I was conflating Take-Two Interactive and 2K Games, where, to be super clear, and thanks for pointing this out, Take-Two Interactive are the parent company, 2K Games are a subsidiary, as are Rockstar, as sort of r/were private division, and Zynga. So genuine thanks to everyone who pointed that out. I'm always, truthfully, I hold my hands up, I always make the mistakes. I see T2, which is the shorthand for Take-Two, and 2K, and my mind goes there, the same thing. They're not. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you, guys.
Good. Thank you, Dan. Thank you all for listening. Excited to read your comments about this week's show. And we will be back next week on Wednesday at 6 o'clock for another episode of GTA 6 o'clock.